Hello friends! So welcome to another reading wrap-up. This time it's going to be July, August, September because somehow I just cannot seem to do like a monthly wrap-up like I want to do. I would love to. And then we have these really long ones where I go over everything that I've read in the last 3 months. So maybe I should just accept it that I do quarterly reviews. I think what I dislike about it the most is how I'm not able to like fully remember all these books, because once 2 months have passed, the book is like gone from my mind. My thoughts are gone from it. And I have not been very good with writing reviews so that I actually remember my thoughts. But here we go. So we're going to start off in chronological order. For the books that I read in July, I actually did write reviews with ratings. For some reason, Storygraph right now is like not working, so I can't see my ratings of things. So I will put them on the screen when I find that. The first book I read was Darryl. It's really hard to see this cover. This is by Jackie S. I got this book recommended through Sage in like a yearly favorite book a long time ago. I remember they did. I took like screenshots of some books that were like on their top that I was interested in, and I saved it on my desktop for like such a long time because I really wanted to read those books, and I think several people are typing is one of them and Darryl is one of them, and I finally got to it. I think this is like a reprinting of it, and it's such an interesting book. You're following Darryl, like kind of his inner monologue. He's in a marriage, this woman, and he's a cuck, so he like likes to watch his wife have sex with like other men, and it's really, really interesting because you get his inner monologue. It's his reflections about like masculinity, about who he is, and you get to like see him explore his gender identity. And I think because of his kink and because he kind of lives off of an inheritance, so he's not really like the breadwinner in the family, and all these things that kind of put him in a way outside of what's considered masculine, you see him really like grapple with these subjects, like who is he if he's not like masculine or a man, and he makes this like trans friend that makes him question like, am I trans? And he goes through all of that, but it tackles a lot of super interesting topics from like a cis-het man perspective that feels very queer. And I mean, by the end it's kind of like, I don't think Darryl is not queer, you know? It's really funny. This is like comedy in so many ways. There's a lot of like lines that I would have highlighted if I actually ended up highlighting this book, just because they're really humorous. And I think the way that Darryl like processes his feelings around all these different topics is very relatable. Like he grapples with like racism and how it feels in him, and all these like very contradictory feelings that he has that is sometimes like problematic and but also relatable in a weird way. Like I think the way he thinks I found relatable, even if it's like the things he thinks about are not relatable, like the process of it, I could like see myself in. And he's kind of like an unlikable character. Like you're not really supposed to like Darryl, but it's a good book. I gave it 4.25 stars. And my favorite part of it, I guess, is that there started to be some Easter eggs for characters or something that are in this book that appear in The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this must just be like a little Easter eggs for people who've read The Sluts. But no, like this character and that storyline from The Sluts like fully integrates into this story, which I was not expecting at all. And it really makes me wonder if there are more Easter eggs from like or storylines from different books that also kind of like continue in this book that I don't know about. So yeah, this was really interesting, so weird, so funny, also kind of icky, like, but yeah, I recommend this. This is a good time. After that, I picked up an ARC that I received through NetGalley, and I think actually it's coming out this week, which I forgot about this week when I'm filming it. Who knows when this will be up. This is Veal by Mackenzie Nolan. This is like a thriller horror book. You're following a character, Lawrence, and her best friend, Stacia, who have kind of like run away from a little bit like their capitalistic lifestyle and everyday job to come and start a new life in this little town called Mistaken Point. And Mistaken Point has had killings of young women in the recent past, but the culprit has been taken. But there is some ambiguity about whether they've gotten the right guy, because the women in the town are still feeling like very haunted, and everyone's acting a little bit strange still, and there are some like very creepy feelings of like being watched, and maybe there's a monster, something like that, you know? My positives about this book is that it was like really page turning, and throughout most of the book I actually thought it would be like a 4-star or 5-star. I enjoyed it like so much, and I stayed up like way past my bedtime to read the book. It has this like core group of like friends that develop in the book, so like Stacia, Lawrence, and these 2 other people, one of them who is like Lawrence's kind of romantic interest, but they're all lesbians, very different type of lesbians and characters and personalities. And I really liked like their friendship and seeing how they were so different, and they had their like interpersonal drama and background and trauma, and it like all played a role, and it was like very complex and also very heartwarming to see like kind of this like community and friendship grow. And I think like the banter between them was really good. Like I really liked the dialogue throughout this whole book. Like I like that a lot. Here's where it kind of like goes wrong. The themes in this book, well, one, like not really interesting to me. It was a lot about like trauma and parents and mothers. Yeah, it felt like super redundant. I feel like the themes were like really driven home, but in such an annoying way. Like we would get glimpses from like Lawrence's past, for example, and it would never come to anything. Like we would never really learn the whole story of her past or why things were like traumatic to her. The themes were just like so lackluster, but also like over-explained to the audience in a way that I felt was very unnecessary. And then the ending was just not for me. I had so many theories about like what was going on in this town, who was like doing the killings, like a lot of really interesting theories that I enjoyed a lot more than the actual conclusion, which was like very lackluster and not exciting at all. And I felt like that was such a disappointment like at the end. So I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars because I actually had so much fun reading it. But like overall, it was just like I wanted to edit the book. Like it's just, I think if they really would have like made the themes and the ending tie together better and more interesting, like this could have been really amazing. But I really enjoyed it, I guess, even though I gave it 3.5 stars and like hated the ending. Then I picked up this comic book called Love Misha by Eskil Aiden. We had like a kind of late release party for this comic with Eskil at the Pond, the queer bookstore where I work. It was so cute. And we got like a comic reading, which I've never experienced before, like where there's, you know, like a projector and like a person's like reading out the comic. And so I read that in like preparation for it, but it's so cute. You're following Misha and their mother, who are going on like this trip together, and then they end up sort of getting trapped in this other world, and they have to sort of work together to be able to escape it and go back to their everyday life. They have a lot of like interpersonal issues because of Misha being non-binary and their mom kind of being accepting in the beginning, but then have kind of gone back and now sort of like don't understand somehow. And their relationship is very complicated, and Misha is kind of like trying to come to terms with the fact that like their mother has their own like alone life and is their own person. And it's difficult when you're queer and your parent doesn't understand or doesn't understand why it's so important. And so like I was saying a month ago before my battery died and I couldn't film until now, I'm gonna start where I left off. I found this book really relatable because of like personal things that were actually happening in my life that aligned so well with the book that it like really connected with me and made me feel like so understood. Even though we're such different ages, we still have like complicated relationships with our parents. And this was very similar to like my experience with one of my parents, and so this was like very healing to me when I read it. So that was very special. There's also just like really cute creatures, and see if I can find any cute creatures. I mean, I'll show you some of the art style. Okay, I can't find any cute creatures right now. while I'm flipping through it. I would recommend this to like tarot card readers and people who like Studio Ghibli. This is super cute. It's very character driven and not very plot driven. So if you like character driven comic books, highly recommend this one. Then I picked up a new release at the time. This is Of Monsters and Mainframes by Barbara Truelove. I wish I would have included this in like a vampire vlog because it was so fun. I didn't plan on reading this, but then I read it and I really loved it. It's such a fun time. You're following like the future. There's a spaceship that is an AI, it's sentient, and something happens on the spaceship that kind of sets off this revenge plot of this like Dracula vampire, like literally Dracula. And the AI has like a revenge thing against him, but it's also about the character who are on the ship when this occurs. And so you follow a lot like the inner monologue of the AI of the ship, but also other AIs, and it's really, really fun. Like it says a lot on the back that doesn't really happen until way later in the book. So I highly recommend like not looking at the synopsis because it will spoil a lot of things and also make you think that the book is a bunch of things that it is not, because it doesn't necessarily have like a plot that really takes off or you understand the reason why things are happening until way later in the book. But then if you're just there for the ride, you'll have a really good time because there's a lot of fun things that it's just the way it's written, and the action is really fun, and parts of it, especially the beginning to the middle part, is very repetitive because it stretches such long periods of time and you don't really get to understand why everything is happening straight away. You're in it for the long haul, but it's a good long haul. I also really liked how this book combines a lot of like the old supernatural like gothic creatures like Frankenstein and mummies and Dracula into like a sci-fi plot, like the combination of like classic sci-fi and classic like monsters into like a futuristic book is really cool and something I've never read before. And you're learning a lot about the world and the characters and everything through the action, so it doesn't feel like dumpy at any point. I think my biggest qualm about the book is just like how everything happens so fast at the end, and a lot of it is just very, very enjoyable to read. And so when the resolution happens, it's like so fast. It's just like the last 100 pages, and I could have used honestly like 100 more pages of this book just because there's so much more you want to know. And it's very visual. Like I really wanted to do like fan art of all the characters when I was reading it, and it's a fun story about how this AI is so ostracized basically because they're fighting against their programming to gain empathy, which is something that they're inclined to feel and pursue for some reason that's kind of based on like personality and who the AI is. It's not like pro AI, it's just kind of like a fun sci-fi fantasy book. Highly recommend this. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was such a good time. After that, I listened to the audiobook of, what was it called? Hot Girls with Balls by Benedict Nguyen. Yeah, this was like one of those highly anticipated releases, and I decided to listen to it as an audiobook because it is kind of like a modern contemporary book. So you're following two volleyball players called, throughout the book, Green and Six, and they're two Asian trans women in men's volleyball team, and they're in a relationship even though they're on different teams. And the book is written in third person for like Six and Green did this, and also through like a lot of online comments that is said about them through like live stream chats that they're doing together. It's an interesting, very like of our time book because it explores like specifically trans women in sport, which is a subject that has exponentially gotten way too much attention for what the problem actually is, which is nothing. But so it feels like it kind of tackles this topic, but it's also about like being famous and trans or queer like in the limelight, and what kind of responsibilities do you have and do you not have for like trans people everywhere when you are like a visible trans person. And then it's about a lot of like the characters grappling with their relationship, like how real it is, how authentic they can be with themselves while still being like an outward portrayal for people. And yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think I wish that book went a lot deeper because you have to read a lot in between the lines. And I think in many ways, the way it's written feels like it's a little bit for everyone slash maybe leaning towards cis people, but the conversations are a little bit more, if you really want to get the most out of the book, I think you have to have some sort of like connection with the community or understanding of the topic. I gave it 3.5 stars. Like, this was a good time, and there's a lot of parts that are really, really funny, and I really, really, really recommend like the audiobook. 5 stars for the audiobook. I think the narrator is called Nikki something, and she's also like a trans woman, and she does like amazing voice work. And especially when, you know, you're reading the chats or like things people are saying in the comments, she'll use like different voices and really use like all of her voice range and accents and everything to like portray the character that's like behind laying this specific comment. And that part is like especially really, really fun to read. So like highly recommend the audiobook. I am really glad this book exists because it portrays a really unique experience of like what it is like being a trans woman in sport. And both of these women haven't like medically transitioned, and I think parts of it was like, I find this setup very unbelievable, but I think that's why it is also a very intriguing book to read, on top of the fact that like everyone who's in their team, and it seems most people do respect like their pronouns and their identity. And I also find that very hard to believe that that would happen, especially I think it takes place in the US, that it would be like this. But I just think it was a very interesting book. I'm very glad it exists. I do recommend the audiobook. Yeah, I wish it went deeper, or like something switched in the narrative, like something halfway through the book or to the end made it a bit more interesting. There's definitely plot that incentivized like a different types of conversations, but I wanted it to narratively switch a little bit, and I think that could have really made it like an amazing book.
I've read this book. You want your coffee?
Yeah, but now that I realized when you got back there, it wasn't as convenient for you. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Here you go.
Oh my god. Wow, the service.
Yeah. Hey, good luck with your video.
Thank you. It's getting a little dark, isn't it? Then we picked up this one for the small queer press book club that we have at the pond, where we're reading Cypher Press. I think this is the last one. This is Bonehorn by Prudence Bussey Chamberlain, which is just like an excellent name. This is sort of like a detective story. You're following... Did I write a review for this one? I did. Oh my god, I'm not gonna read that review. I think I remember, because we discussed this book. You're following this woman who has lost her partner, but she still has like a child, and she runs like a private detective service, and then she gets her first job, and her job is to find Alice Toklas' horn. There's this myth that she had a horn, and it's her job to find out proof of it being real, essentially. And so she goes on this hunt to get like read literature about Gertrude Stein and Alice Toklas and their relationship. And then she travels to some countries, France, Canada, I think, to figure out more about it. And it's all from this like mysterious person that she doesn't know, who it seems very like secretive about this mission. I think for me, like the most fun part are all the references to like shows that I really like Buffy and Twilight, that's like incorporated into the story. I also think it's great to have like read a book about someone who's like a mother, someone who's going through grief, and like the ways that she's tackling grief. I mean, she has like sex with a lot of strangers that she kind of like meets along the way. It seems like kind of like it's trying to emulate this like a classic detective story, but I feel like it doesn't go full on in because of all these other complex themes that it's trying to do. It's very like low stakes type of book, kind of funny, very middle of the road while still being like a unique concept. I didn't know anything about like Gertrude Stein really and Alice Toklas before this, but it could have also gone even deeper into the meaning of like why this plot like exactly. So I think I gave it, how much did I give it? 3.25 stars. It is just fine. Then I picked up the wonderful Be Gay Do Crime, 16 Stories of Queer Chaos, edited by Molly Llewellyn and Crystal Buckley. The second book they have created or like edited of short stories. I don't remember the individual stories in this, to be honest, because now it was such a long time ago since I read it. Oh, I wrote, this book should be called Be Lesbian, Do Robberies, because essentially it's not very diverse in the different queer identities or representation, but also like not very diverse in the crimes. Like I wish there was a lot more to like be explored, but it is a lot of lesbians, a lot of robberies, a lot of stealing. They range from like quite funny to more deep. I ended up giving it 4 stars, which is what I gave like the Peach Pit as well. But yeah, I can't really remember the individual stories, unfortunately. Oh yeah, well I tabbed 2, so maybe those were my favorites. Of course, A Curse by Kayla Kumari Apadayaya and Bad Dog by Anna Dorn, which I know Anna Dorn has some good books. I really want to read Pain and Perfume. So I got excited about reading those authors' like other works, which is really fun when you can use anthologies in that way to discover new authors. But yeah, 4 stars. This was a good time. Okay, see, after this, I stopped writing any reviews, and I also did my witching vlog, which I think should be up by now, where I read The Sapling Cage, Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and Awakened. So you can check out that video if you want to know about those 3 books, because I'm not gonna do double reads and talk about them today. Then I listened to the audiobook The Dry Season by Melissa Febos. This is her 2nd memoir, I believe. She's a writer and former like sex worker, and this is a book about her year where she was celibate, and kind of like all her experiences and reflections through this period. So it goes a bit into like the history of celibacy. It talks about like feminism in so many different ways, pulling from different like writers. It blends sort of like memoir and philosophy and academics together and to create like this non-linear narrative, and her experience and thoughts like during this process, and like everything she realizes about herself when it comes to her relationship to sex and relationships in general, like how she treats relationships. And I think I wanted to read this book because I also have like complicated relationship with sex and other people in relationships, but I felt like this was so different from my experience, and I guess I didn't find like the references in the text that she pulled from as interesting or relevant to my life, and therefore didn't enjoy it as much. But I think it's super well written. It's narrated by Melissa Febos, the audiobook. So I recommend this I think if you have like similar thoughts or experiences as her, but I also think like maybe I would enjoy it more if I was in my 30s or like late 30s and I've had a bit more life experience, which feels a bit odd to admit. But those were my general thoughts on that. Like I said, no more reviews. This is memory-based, people. Oh my god, so many audiobooks. I think it's just because, yeah. I listened to the audiobook, Nice Girls Don't Win by Parvati Shallows. So, as some of you know, if you've watched my vlogs, we watch like Survivor when it comes out. And Parvati is an iconic Survivor star, and she's written her first memoir. So it is, you know, kind of like a regular person or a public figure writing a memoir, writing something. And it's not like the best written thing ever, but I think as an audiobook is actually the perfect format to consume it, because it feels like you're having a long form podcast with a person that you are sort of interested in, and you want some scoop and their thoughts on like a media that you're really interested in, which was like the case for me. And I think I loved learning about her past. I mean, she grew up in this like cult, and which is like a part of her like unique history, her experience with that, and how it's so intertwined with the way she functions with like relationships and how she treats people, how it has evolved into like her relationship with Survivor and a lot of the trauma that came with Survivor, but also how it's such a big part of like who she is now. And there's some like interesting like sex scenes with Mae Martin in there too, because you know they're dating now, and like obviously we're also interested in Mae Martin, so that's just also like a weird combination of queer public figures that are interesting to read about. So also like the experience of like realizing your sexuality and who you are, and later in life, what that can look like. So I really enjoyed this. I don't think I rated it, or no, I didn't give it a rating. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in Survivor, or like, yeah, why not listen to it? I then picked up Mayra by Nikki Gonzalez. I heard about this somewhere as like a swamp horror, I believed, and I was like, that sounds really good. I'm gonna pick it up. So you're following this character who is not like super happy with her life. She lives in Florida, I believe. Her childhood friend comes back in town. Her name is Mayra, and she has like a very mixed relationship with Mayra because of, yeah, their history and like growing up together and how their lived experiences are so different. And there's a lot of like unresolved feelings there. But Mayra invites our main character to go to this house that is in the swamps in Florida that her new boyfriend owns. Our main character is just like, why not, basically. I think she just got fired from her job or something like that. And so she goes with Mayra to this house in the swamps. It's sort of like in the middle of nowhere. And it's essentially starts off this like haunted house story. It's a lot about like the rooms changing, the atmosphere of like the sweat and like just walking in circles and not knowing how far away from the house you are, and their relationship really, like this experience really magnifying the ways they're so different and the ways that they're so entrenched in like who they were, not being able to like change that dynamic. And it's about desire and friendships between women. I was like, there was a little part that was a little homoerotic, and I was like, oh my god, I thought I was reading a cis-het book, but it turns out, yeah, it is a cis-het book. But it was like a good time. But with most horror, I feel like the build-up is, I think Sean said this recently to me as well, and it's so true that a lot of authors write really good build-up, and then the conclusion's just never as satisfying as like the rest of the book. And I had like the same experience with this one. It was kind of like just fine, but it is extremely atmospheric, which is kind of what I wanted from this book. I gave it 4 stars. And then I buddy read with 2 people on Instagram that I cannot remember the name of at the moment. I buddy read The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. One of my favorite books, The Luminous Dad, which is like a cave horror, a sci-fi cave horror, is also written by Caitlin Starling. So I really wanted to check out her other works. First, let's start off with, this is not as gay as I hoped it would be. It's sort of medieval horror. You follow this estate that has walls around it, and the people in there have been without food and contact with the outside world for like a really long time. We don't know how long, and they're just slowly starving. And the dynamic in this castle, I guess, this mound, is strange because they have these people who are some sort of nuns that has contact with like the saints, and then there's still like the king is present. There we followed a couple of characters in this castle, and you just follow them slowly unraveling. The magic system is very vague and fluid, and it's quite claustrophobic. There's a lot of cannibalism, if you didn't already gather that where the story was going. And it's really like frustrating to read at times. It really irked me, and it was really just excellent at building like this atmosphere that's very unique and something I definitely haven't read before. I think it was just not for me, and I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 2.5 stars, but when people talk about all the ways that they do enjoy it, I really understand it. I just think I didn't enjoy the things that they enjoyed, even though we have the same understanding of the book. Yeah, it's just a lot of uncomfortable parts, and it goes in circles sometimes. Like the things that the characters do, they do again and again, and it's really frustrating to read. The writing is good. It was just like not enjoyable for me, unfortunately, which made me feel so disappointed because I literally gave Caitlin's other book 5 stars. So then I read this. This is also for the Small Queer Press Book Club, The Summer of Dead Birds by Ellie Liebgott. This is a poetry memoir collection about grief and loss. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It is very short, but you get such like a vivid, intense experience of Allie going through this grief, like kind of together with their partner. I think, if I remember correctly, their partner's mother dies, and then that sort of ends up ending their relationship. And so it talks about like the levels of grief and how these people deal with grief differently, and what is it called? And weaves in, you know, birds and nature into the narrative in a very beautiful way. I give this 4 stars. It was good. It was a just fine read, really fast to go through, and I was very involved in the story. And it strikes a good mix because it's a memoir, but it's also poetry. It's a good balance between the poetry and the memoir. You can understand that there's a narrative throughout the whole book, which I really appreciated. So we have entered September, and I read Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. I have read his other like fairly newly published stuff too, so I was excited about this one. This is his most like action-packed, intense book to this day. You follow this woman who's not quite accepted by her parents. She is bisexual, she has a partner. In the start of the book, an event occurs that's called the low probability event, which is essentially kind of a worldwide massacre that occurs because of extremely unlikely, strange occurrences. Like, crazy shit truly is happening. Random things are killing everything at the same time, and it just happens. Her mother dies in the process. She never ends up reconnecting with her partner, and she's just in a house in the middle of nowhere, kind of in a rut. She's like, there's no reason for anything because the most unlikely thing ever happened and it was awful. And just like living with the trauma of that. She's like, there's no reason in trying anything. And then she's approached by this man who's like, you were a statistics professor. You know about statistics and stuff. I need your help specifically to solve this thing. And so years later from this event happening, she's brought back involved with like the government and the low probability event. And it's kind of like, you know, what Chuck Tingle does best, this big conspiracy thing. It's super bloody and very slashery. It's also extremely existential because it talks about, you know, improbable events happening and the fact that we can't really control anything, and what if it's all chance, and all these different very existential questions we have about life, but in the most like extreme way that's explored. But it is also very silly because of all the low probability things happening. It wraps up nicely. It was a good time, but I think maybe it is my least favorite Chuck Tingle that I've read to date, but it's still just like a breath of fresh air in the horror-y way that it is. I think it lacked a little bit of depth. I think I was just really frustrated with how pessimistic the main character is. And then I picked up The Annual Migration of Clouds by Prem Mohammed, which has been on my TBR for a really, really long time because it's such a highly recommended book. This was not what I thought it would be, to be honest. I actually barely remember the plot. It's sort of like a post-apocalyptic book, and you're following this character who lives in this town, and they're all suffering like after effects of disastrous climate change, and they've kind of gone back to, I guess, the old human ways of living, of like resources that are close to you, relying on each other, human workforce, collaborating, small towns, all this stuff. But she's been given the opportunity, our main character, to go to this other city where there's still scholars, still people researching things, and she's kind of been chosen to be there and learn, which is like what she wants to do. She wants to help, she wants to learn more about why the world is the way it is. And you know, it talks really badly about us in this world, which is always something that I love about climate change books. Right, it's also kind of like about, I forgot about this part, it's also kind of about like disability in a lot of ways, because she has this specific parasite that brings about a lot of like both physical like changes that you can see, but also pain, and her mother is suffering a lot from it. And this virus is kind of also what led to humanity dying out in many ways. It's a virus that affects your nervous system and the way you experience pain, but it's also talked about kind of as this like fungus that she has like she can talk to in a sense, and that is alive, which is really interesting. This is like the type of book that I would absolutely love, and I did really like it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I wish I had a proper understanding of like what the ending would actually be like, because it doesn't end the way that I was expecting, and rather than accepting that, I was kind of mad about it. But I really do recommend this book, as in like short climate fiction books. It was really special. I think the way it talked about chronic pain was quite good. I'm glad to finally have read this and read a good book by Prem Mohammed, because I read their other book way back and I didn't like it at all. I remember I gave like 1 or 2 stars, but this was a long time ago. So yeah, very happy I read this. Then I read the little short cute novella called Helen House by Kyla. Oh, that's the author of that I really liked the short story book from. That's the Helen House by the author that also wrote the short story in Be Gay, Do Crime called Kayla Kumari Upadhyaya. So that's cool. I did not realize that, I think. Maybe I realized it and then forgot it. So you're following this lesbian couple who've been together for quite a while, And in the start of the book, the main character's girlfriend reveals to her that, you know, by the way, I should tell you, my sister died. And our main character is like, why are you saying this now? We've been together for so long. Because my sister is also dead. And she's like, why didn't you say this earlier? And it only comes up because they're about to go to her girlfriend's like house where she grew up and meet her parents for the first time. And she's kind of like, my parents are a little strange about the fact that my sister died. And she's like, okay, this is weird. It's also rather like steamy in a way, or like sensual in sex scenes, but also in their like relationship dynamics, and talks a little bit about the ways in which grief can arise and like their differences and the way she grew up and how it completely impacted like the life that she had and her parents. But it's a horror. It's like a haunted house horror. So some things happen when they go to the parents' house. That's all I can say. It's really good. It's super, super short, so I highly recommend it. I give it 4.75 stars. It was just like sweet, good time, but also really deep subjects that it talks about, and very well written. So, highly recommend. Then I picked up The Remainder by Alia Trabuco Sedan, which is a book that's been on my TBR for also a very long time. I guess this is kind of like when the Shorty September started with the annual migration of birds. This is translated from Spanish, takes place in Chile, and honestly this is one of those books that I wish I wrote a review about because I do not remember a lot about this book. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. You're following three people who I right now cannot remember why they're connected, but they're going on a road trip together because I'm getting it now. Three people who grew up together. One of their mothers died and she's been shipped from a different country because she died in a different country. Then they lose the body. The transportation loses the body. So they have to travel to this other city. And so they all go on this road trip together to get one of their moms. Yeah, and they're, right, what connects them is that they're all have dads who've been in the military. And so you learn about like just their relationship, basically growing up with their fathers, without their fathers, the ways that they're connected, and it's a study in relationships, essentially. And I honestly can't tell you so much more than that. This remarkable debut presents a new way to count the cost of a pain that stretches across generations. It was nice. And then I did like a super short Shorty September reading vlog where I read these three books, Binti, Lupus Fabula, and Dear God, Dear Bones, Dear Yellow. So if you want to look at my thoughts on these, you can check out that vlog. Then we only have 3 more books to talk about. The sun's like basically gone down. It's 4 o'clock. So the lighting's a little meh, a little yellow. Okay, then I read this one. This is My Lesbian Novel by Renee Gladman. Boy, did I love this so much. It's written in interview format. So it's an interview between Renee Gladman, the author, and an unknown interviewer. And they are talking about the novel that Renee Gladman is writing in the book, which is a romance novel, so it's very meta. You know, you also get snippets of the romance novel, but the interviewer is interrogating Renee about the relationships, why she's writing in this way, her general thoughts on romance as a genre, lesbian romance. And it's just really, really good because of the format. It gets kind of silly, but it also talks about, you know, like writing and the ways we write, and especially like the ways we think about memory and how memory functions in the brain and how that relates to like writing and relationships. It's just really, really fascinating. I find memory very fascinating because I also have a horrible memory. And so to read about that through like the practice of writing is really cool. And I think the book that Renee writes, or like the parts that we get to see at least, is a good book too. Like I'm interested in the romance novel that she's writing in the book. And together it's like both a study in writing, but also the ways we communicate our writing, and then the ways we reflect upon it, and then also the outcome. Like, I just think it's such a cool way to write a book, and it was just really well done. I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. One of my favorite books of the year. This was really, really good. Yeah, and I highlighted quite a few things that I really liked about the book. Then we have Another book that we read for the Small Queer Press Book Club from Amethyst Editions, also known as a sub-press of the Feminist Press. This is Skye Papers by Jamika Ajalon, which I have had on my radars for years, since Sage, I think, talked about it as one of their favorite books way back. It's essentially about like state surveillance. In a sense, you're following our main character who, no, that's a spoiler. It's about our main character who follows a friend of hers and her friend's friend to London, where she discovers herself, but she has this feeling that she's being watched, and her friend and her friends are having strange conversations, and sometimes they're talking as if there's like cameras in the room, and they are squatting in this building. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's really good. I highly recommend it. And I love the book. They're just kind of like smoking weed, throwing parties, having grand plans that never really amount to anything. And our main character, she kind of wants to be a writer in a way. Like, she writes in her book and she has these ambitions about sharing it, but it never really comes to fruition because she's too caught up in like this relationship and this new like girl that she's having this like intense connection with. But it is so hard to maintain it because she goes away and all of these things. It's messy in a way. The circle we go in the book, how it all connects together, the things that are revealed to us, I thought it was really well done. It feels like a very honest account of the author's experience, especially after like looking online, seeing some of her slam poetry, like poetry readings and stuff. It feels very aligned like with the main character, very true. I could have just read the back, which says, a portrait of a young black artist in the 1990s London underground scene whose existence is threatened by the rise of state surveillance. That sums up the book, basically. I gave it 4.75 stars, and I think it's still very relevant today, to be honest, both with like police and state violence, but also with the ways art and people are capitalized on in different ways. And then I don't want to waste too much time on this. This is a comic that I read over a long period of time because it's not very thick, but it's a lot of text. It's very slow. I give it 2 stars. I originally picked this up because Ryan North is the writer of the Adventure Time comics, most of them which I like a lot. And so I saw this a long time ago, and then I recently just decided to pick it up because it was on my shelf and I've been wanting to read a comic. You're kind of following like a space crew who hears this myth about a earth that is all made of gold, which is essentially true because in this world, Midas, when he wished for that everything he touches turns to gold, actually came true. The world turned to gold, and now we're following these space characters who's heard about this myth and plan on taking some gold, making them rich, but it sort of spirals. So you're following these 3 characters. This is the captain, and then we have her. Is there a better picture of her? We have her, and then this guy who's feel like she does like communications, and he is like engine guy, mechanic. There's also a dinosaur, which is kind of fun. But I think my main problem with this one is that it's too much story for one comic book. There's a lot of text and not enough visuals to support the text. So it's a lot of reading, and the art seems very, very stiff in their expressions, and I just like took too much time, even though it's very fun concept of a story. So it is actually the 1st of December today, so I could just go ahead and do all of November, but the sun is basically gone down. I'm tired. This is already probably a long video, so we're gonna wrap it up there, and then we're gonna hope that I do a wrap up of October, November, December, early January, which seems doable at this point. And then of course I'll post like my end of year graphics on Instagram with like all the books I read, my favorite books, and all of that. Thank you for bearing with me, that you sat with me and talked about. Thank you for thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with me through having good lighting and good clothes to 1 month later when I continue this wrap up, and for me being so slow with releasing stuff, including Slut Vlog, Witch Vlog, Vampire Vlog, maybe. It's a lot going on, and I'm doing my best to keep this channel alive because it is my passion project. So thank you for being here and listening to me rant, and you're welcome to rant in the comments if you read any of these books, what you've been reading, any thoughts at all. I'd love to chat with you. And hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Have a good day. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.